All right, welcome everyone to the fall 2021 IMA alumni panel. I would like to welcome our guests, Alex, Laura, Vinnie, and Dejia. We also have Sierra Waite joining us on Zoom. So Sierra, I might actually pull you in because you are an IMA and COM alumni too. So I'd like to welcome everyone. I am joining you all from Keppel Hall. I have a few in-person students that are participating that might have some questions for you all. But I would like to start out with each of you introducing yourselves with your graduation year. We do have one alumni member who's joining us who was, as we would like to say, BK or before Keppel. And the rest of you have been able to enjoy your classes here in Keppel Hall. So if we could start out actually with Alex. So Alex, you are our farthest past alumni that is going to be joining us for today. So it's great to have you joining us. If you could introduce yourself, share your POE when you were here at Juniata and then the year that you graduated.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Alex. I graduated in 2017. So just before Keppel Hall began construction, and I was BAC girl. I had all my classes in the comms wing and all of that fun stuff. My POE when I graduated was multimedia production. It was an individualized POE. So I had a bunch of Donna Weimer comms classes, a lot of IMA practicum classes with Ryan, and personalized it to fit alongside more video production line, which is what I am pursuing my career in currently. It was also a dual major with international studies. So I had some politics background and studied abroad and did all of those fun things while I was at Juniata. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Laura, do you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Laura. I graduated in 2020 and my POE was also individualized. It was visual arts with communication. And I'm currently, should we say our current role?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm currently a video clearance producer at Vox Media.
Okay. All right, Vinnie, you're up next on my screen.
Hey everyone, I'm Vinnie. I also graduated in 2020 with an individualized POE of graphic communication. So it was COM, IMA, and English. And I'm currently a graphic designer for Sheets.
If any of you heard of Sheets, y'all know about Sheets? I always used to say that would be a fun design job. So we will ask you some questions, I'm sure. Thank you, Vinnie, welcome. Dejia, you are up next on my screen.
Hi everyone, I'm Dejia Danhi. I graduated in 2020 as well. I had an individualized POE in multimedia design, so it was IMA and COM with some gender studies in there. Currently, I am in school, so I'm pursuing my master's in social design at MICA, the Maryland Institute College of Art in Baltimore, Maryland.
Awesome. Thank you. I did mention at the beginning, for those that are just joining us, we were scheduled to have six participants today. Two have had to back out, but I am planning to get some video interview files from them and to work with them to possibly do a studio tour. So at some point I will share those with either the panelists and also the attendees that are here with us in person and on Zoom. So I would like to start out with four of you are here joining us as panelists. All of you have worked through the last year, which would be a COVID year, right? Whether you're in grad school, you're working in person, you're doing freelance work, you're interviewing for jobs. Some of you I know also do production work that is on the side, possibly weddings, photography work, lots of different types of commissioned design or photography or video work. So I wanted to ask you all how, and any of you can take on this question, how are you working either from home or in an office setting at the current time?
I can go. Well, currently Since being in school, I do work in the studio. All of my classes are in person, however, we are masked, but I do have studio time majority of the week. None of my classes are virtual. Before going to grad school this year, I did have an online job at an advertising firm, political advertising firm, and all of that was virtual. It was very interesting. It was just a different workplace in terms of communicating with your creative team over a different avenue of technology every day. But it was for sure a challenge, but also kind of earned its own, I guess, in a way, kind of like adapted to the circumstance to be a better designer in terms of like, oh, I don't have to work within the studio. I can work across different platforms with different people on my team.
Good. Anyone else want to share what your current work environment looks like?
Yeah, I can go next. This is where I sit every day for the most part. Being a part of Comcast, which is my the overall umbrella company of where I work, they've been really supportive and flexible with making going back to offices optional, and have really embraced the virtual world. So before we shifted, my day-to-day was a lot of commuting in my car to go to clients' physical locations and have, hour-long meetings, get back in my car, drive another 2 hours to go across the state somewhere else for another meeting. And being in this space, we've actually been able to be a lot more productive because of all of this time spent traveling and not being able to get any work done. We can have more meetings, we can get things done faster. And being that our agency is attached to Comcast, we have a lot of really great resources at our fingertips, which includes animation studios, footage libraries, things that a lot of smaller production companies don't have at reasonable fees or production costs. So we've sort of pivoted our way of coming up with creative ideas to incorporate ways we could go to market with a brand strategy that doesn't actually require us to go on location or film with actors in a studio and things like that. Certainly this year I've done a lot of animated creative projects, which is new for me, and consistently challenging myself to think out of the box and find a way to not have to be on set. So yeah.
All right, anyone else want to share what your office environment looks like these days?
Yeah, I'll go. I got hired back in March of 2021, and the plan when I first got hired was for everyone to be back into the office in May. And so I had to make a quick move to Huntington since the corporate office isn't too far from here. And then the return to office date got moved to October with the option to go into the office 2 days a week. And now it just got pushed to January of 2022, the official full send return to office date. So right now it's kind of, if you want to go to the office, you can. There's no mandatory days. Sometimes it's nice just so I can put on real clothes rather than just rolling out of bed and wearing sweatpants and a hoodie. You can actually get dressed and maybe see some of your coworkers if they decide to go into the office. And then some days it's necessary to go in there if we need to get measurements on a site that we're designing things for, or there's a shoot that day that they need a lot of hands on deck for. But for the most part, I'm with Alex. This is pretty much my view every day. One of the nice things about doing graphic design is you're in front of a computer anyways, so you can kind of do that wherever. So having that flexibility is nice.
Yeah, I'm in a similar position. It's pretty much a voluntary basis to come into the office, although my team kind of agreed to come in on Wednesdays when we can. Sometimes it's just nice to be able to hash things out and communicate directly instead of going back and forth endlessly on Slack. So I really enjoyed that. But yeah, a lot of our work is conducive for the computer anyway, so it's been okay. I've enjoyed having that mixture.
Okay. All right, one of the other questions that I want to ask before I open it up to ask the students if they have questions is, what is a day in the life? So either Dejia as a grad student in Baltimore, what is a day in the life? Alex, now that you're not spending all of that time commuting, what does your workday look like? Laura, how do you plan out your projects? Vinnie, do you get to eat lots of free Sheets food? I think I did hear from Grace that you were testing food one day recently. So I would love to hear, what is a day in the life of your jobs? You're all doing different types of creative work, or in graduate school preparing to do creative work in the community environment. And I'd love to hear, what is your normal day like? So anyone, feel free.
I can start again. Since being a student, it's kind of just, I have 3 courses a week, starts from like 9 to 3. So I'm in the studio majority of my day. Breakfast, who knows if I eat that. But usually it's just like 9 to 3, just studio work. And then after that, I'm still in the studio working with the client or working with one of my cohort members on one of our many assignments we have to do. We're in 3 studio classes, so you're juggling like 3 projects at a time usually. So there's always something to do after like that, a lot of time you have within your course. So I'm basically in the studio till maybe 6 o'clock, so 9 to 6. That's usually 3 days a week, and then I'll have like an elective, and that's pretty kind of my breath of fresh air where I don't have to be in the studio. I'm in like a printing studio, which is kind of like, thank God I don't have to do like very intensive work on this day. So it kind of varies, but usually it's like 9 to 6, 3 days a week, and then 4 hours allotted a day for extra work.
So I always like to say that I'm a wearer of many hats. In my role, my title is creative lead, which basically means director, producer, writer, script supervisor, casting manager, salesperson, editor, you name it. I probably have had to do it at some point in my role. So every day is very different, and the types of clients that I'm working with vary drastically. So I could wake up and have a morning client call where I'm meeting them for the first time, understanding their business, what their challenges are, things that they've done with marketing in the past, things that have worked, and use that conversation to help me generate creative ideas to develop for a campaign that I could put together for them. Then I could be brainstorming with my team on throwing any ideas on the wall and see what sticks for that particular client's business. Sometimes they're extremely out of the box, like crazy, wild. I'm getting phone calls right now for, I'm just gonna turn this off real quick. There we go. Then I will be writing scripts. The next day I could be directing on set. Then I'm selecting cast for a future shoot. I'm sending out production schedules. I'm working with editors on spots that are moving forward into production, working on digital campaigns, social media posts, website development. It's all very different. So every day is a new challenge. How I have a work-life balance is beyond me. But yeah, so that's about it.
Oh, sorry. Vinnie, are you gonna go? Or okay, cool.
You can go, it's okay.
I was like, are we going in the same order? It's good. So video clearance producer. Basically, we're preparing to launch a channel similar to YouTube TV on Roku, but that launch is in November. So we're trying to legally clear our backlog of videos in the archive, as well as balance the ongoing productions. So some days I'll just be making cue sheets, tracking those assets, communicating with video producers on that sort of thing. Other days I'll be focusing on like re-editing them if there are issues with the videos. And yeah, just a lot of coordination between departments and preparing those videos for launch because we're trying to get more hours on the channel.
Yeah, and my day-to-day, my title is graphic designer one, but of all the designers, I'm a production designer. So we have like digital designers, photographers, things like that. And so every day starts with a stand-up meeting where the whole creative team just goes through their daily task for the day. And if they have any roadblocks, that's where they get taken care of, so that the rest of the day can be pretty smooth. And then what I'm designing can vary between the 8 hours that I'm working day to day. I can start with billboards that go on the side of the highway, working next to doing like food labels for little like pre-made sandwiches that are in the shop, to doing internal communication design just for the Sheets internal team at the distribution center. So like as a production designer, it can be like very fast paced, constantly just like lots of different projects on your plate in the span of a workday. But I mean, it's a pretty like seamless process with each project. So you're dishing out a lot of work, just because things have quick turnover time to get to send to print and to be placed in all the stores. So.
All right, I have a question that I think most of our attendees that are here, either in person or on Zoom, would probably appreciate me asking. We have an upcoming resume update workday, and I'm also currently signing everyone's individualized POE forms and secondary emphasis forms. I'm wondering if any of you could explain how important your degree title or your individualized POEs, right? How much did you feel that you had to shape that and explain that to apply for the positions in the graduate programs that you're currently in? And obviously you may interview in places where folks are not familiar with Juniata College or the individualized program or major. So I'm wondering how now post-graduation, looking back, if you have any advice for students that are really concerned about what that title is, and any advice that you might have for them.
Yeah, I can go. I think it's maybe less important what the title of that degree is, but if you have work or examples in a portfolio that can support what you've studied, the type of work that you've done to support all of your other classes and the hands-on material that you've created, I think that can be really helpful as well. I know in my current role, they had taken a look at my website and portfolio of work before ever setting up an interview. So they were already familiar with my background in some particular example projects, or they asked me a lot about the video production team as a manager when I had my first interview, and wanted to know all about what I did there. So I think that's probably a key thing that would help with that.
Okay. Anyone else? So POE titles and how they've impacted your ability to find work.
Yeah, I would say personally, I didn't have to explain the individualization so much. I think the most important thing is that your POE and the title should reflect your personal focus and your skills. I agree with a lot of what Alex said. So it's more like a reflection. It's meant to convey what you're doing. Yeah, it hasn't been a problem really for me.
Yeah, I guess since I'm in a different situation, I did have to apply to my program through a resume as well. However, it is a design-centered program, so I didn't have to elaborate much on what my title was, but I did have to elaborate on what work I did and why I did that work. So it's more so you conveying why you did the work you did and how it speaks to the title you've given yourself. And why do you feel like you fit in that field that you have prescribed yourself? So does the work you've done speak to that? The passions that you have speak to that? How are you backing that up throughout your resume? And can you sell yourself as well through that work that you've done? Are you showing for that? So yeah.
And I guess when I was interviewing for my position, they just had a lot of questions on the communication part of my POE and how that related to a very technical, like graphic design field. Just because a lot of my coworkers, like their degrees are in graphic design or in illustration, so very technical degrees. And yeah, just being able to thoroughly explain like how my individualized POE makes me just as competitive or maybe gives me an advantage compared to people who may have those very technical degrees, and how that'll benefit the company and the position that I'm applying for. So I don't think the title, um, like Alex said, is like the make or break. It's just how you can explain it. And then also just having like a really solid portfolio to present to them to show that you're valuable in whatever you're applying for.
Can I just jump in and add one more thing that I just thought of? I think also as you go out into the world and explore the jobs available, your own interpretation of your POE might change. So one thing I noticed is the addition of my communications one. I never really thought about it as journalism at the time I was at Juniata, but now I see how it is evolved to incorporate that. And so I reflect on my time differently and how it can apply to the industry. So I think be comfortable with seeing how it evolves for yourself too.
One of the other things I wanted to mention, Vinnie, I know you and I, and maybe even Dejia and I have had this discussion, but some students come in really feeling the need to have a title of graphic design or design in some capacity. And as you just mentioned, Vinnie, it is the Juniata way of approaching community engaged learning and local engagement projects does give you all, I would say, a one-up of your experience of working on real projects, working with clients. So that is one area where I always encourage students, don't feel like you have to have a title that is on the job search. You're going to be much more competitive if your portfolio can showcase and tell the story of your true abilities and how that varies from someone that strictly has a degree with one title. So great feedback from all of you. I want to open it up to questions from the students that are here, either in person or on Zoom. If anyone that is on Zoom would like to ask a question, let's use the hand raise feature. And then you can unmute yourself if you'd like to speak up that way. And I'll check in anyone in the room that has any questions or any specific things that you'd like to hear about from the folks that have just graduated. Jackie?
I'm interested in knowing if they apply to jobs that require more experience out of school.
Okay.
And if they're able to get those jobs.
Okay. So Jackie's question is, did any of you apply for jobs that required maybe 1 to 2 years of experience or a number of years of experience directly out of school? And were you able to successfully get those jobs, or did you feel prepared to get those jobs? And if so, maybe explain how and why.
That certainly came up in my interview for my current role. So I was 22 when I first started my job. I was 1 year out of school, not even a full year actually. So I believe the listing said 5+ years of creative director, producer experience. And I had my experience as manager at the video production team and my in-class experience and my internship experience, but not any like live in the field experience really that much at this point. Just a short-term internship immediately after graduation. And it certainly did come up like, oh, you know, you're only 22. Are you going to be prepared to handle the challenges that this role will require of you? And I really twisted it and reinforced that the fact that I am new to this world, it means that I'm extremely eager to learn, and I'm going to be like a sponge and adapt to the challenges. And whereas someone who might have 10+ years of experience doing the exact same thing every single day, it might be harder for them to adjust to a new process or a new agency approach. which actually I found out after I got the job, the runner-up to my role was someone who had many, many years of producing experience, and they chose me instead because of my eagerness to learn and being able to be that sponge and take it all in and learn as much as I can and evolve and provide new ideas to the agency approach. And I'm thrilled that I got the opportunity, and now an Emmy nominated producer as a result of it. So I think they made a good decision.
Awesome. Anyone else want to chime in on the question from Jackie? So any requirements of years of experience, did you feel prepared to apply for jobs that maybe you felt were a little bit outside of your experience level?
I would say the main thing for my current job is that I didn't study copyright law, but I'm dealing with a lot of copyright law. So I would say don't let one aspect that you're worried about, like if you're reading a job description and you're like, I don't know how to do that. I really think the pushing the eager to learn aspect and how your other skills can factor into that based on what your past experience at Juniata can help just push past that, because it is a wish list a lot of the times too. So I would just say, don't let a scary application hold you back from applying, and just see how you can push yourself for them. Like that's a really good example you had, Alex.
Yeah, just to echo what everyone said, I think when I was beginning, like tangling with the idea of like, do I want to go back to school or do I want to apply to a job? And I was like, okay, I'll do both, but like short term. But when I was looking for jobs, I was given the advice that they're just describing their perfect person. And I was like, okay, that won't be me. However, I do bring like many facets to this job, this role that they're asking for. And many things I think people take for granted is that you can learn on the job as well. And I think that's just not advertised to grown-ups that are just graduating, that you most definitely can learn on the job. I think if you have that in mind, and also know that like you do have valuable experience while in undergrad, that if you are an IMA, like you are out in the field working with clients, not many students have that experience in terms of how to have discourse with another individual in terms of facilitating a project. And so that is a very key asset to have when applying to like 1 to 2 year jobs, because some people may not have that. They're just banking on the fact that they may have like graphic design experience or what have you. So you do come out with many skills, and just remembering that they're describing their perfect client. And I think also knowing that like there's like a node in my brain where like committing to like your social identity and knowing that men apply to jobs even if they don't, like even if it says like 4 to 5 years of experience, they like, even if they don't have that, they still do it. And like women or non-binary people like, oh, shy away from it. So you shouldn't, because there's someone who is opposite gender of you that is applying to it just because they think they can. And so you should still do that either way, just to also give that flip side of the aspect of
Gotta keep the imposter syndrome away.
Imposter syndrome is so real.
Every day, like, am I doing a good job? I'm like, it's fine.
Yeah, to echo Deja's point, that was like such a weird hurdle for me to overcome. Like, it's even applying for the current role that I have. I'm like, I barely have a year of experience, and the worst thing they can do is say no, and you put yourself out there anyway. And who knows, a hiring manager might have held on to your resume and your portfolio for possible opportunities that may open up in different departments or different roles that they're just not looking for right at that moment. They think you're a good fit for. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think on that note, like the worst thing they can do is say no. Like you can really learn from the process, like the language and skills that they're looking for these kind of roles, and build off of that. Because at first it was like, there are so many like little details of the industry maybe I'm not super clear on, but like just going through that process and discussing the language really helped me develop my sense of like what kind of jobs to apply for, how to talk about my skills, that kind of thing.
And taking the classes in the IMA department, I think does equip you with like the 1 to 2 years of experience, because when you go and you're in a graphic design program, sometimes a lot of the projects that you're doing are pretty like hypothetical. of like create a movie poster for this alien movie that's coming out in theaters near you, and there's no application for it. And so when you are submitting your application and your resume, and you can send them links to the IMA website of like case studies, real world application case studies, and pictures of these things published in businesses, then they're going to say, wow, like you did this your junior year, you have experience working with clients, you know, project management skills, you know how to do kickoff meetings, all these other things. As an 18, 19, 20-year-old, that some people may have needed those 1 to 2 years of experience after undergrad to gather. But you already have that, which I think can give you the competitive edge.
And Jackie, who asked this question, Jackie is currently doing, I'm going to call you out, Jackie. Jackie's currently working on a year-long senior thesis, who was also funded over the summer with student research grant funding through Juniata. Also doing IMA practicum, the final IMA practicum. I'm so sad they won't be back in the spring, but it's okay. And museum practicum. So, you know, great example of exactly what you all are mentioning, that really determining the area and the field that you're interested in and honing in and focusing the work that you're doing to allow yourself to have that 1 to 2 years of experience, even as a sophomore, junior, senior, right? And I have to chime in on Vinnie's comment of mock design projects. I am the product of that. And I will tell you all, having that real experience of someone saying, no, and I don't like your work, you do really need that. And just as Laura mentioned, having the ability to interview for jobs and maybe not get it, and understanding why you didn't get it. Not to feel defeated by that, but to understand maybe you weren't the right fit at this time, but you could be in the future. So it's all great sage advice for students that are going to be graduating here in the next couple of months. All right, other questions from the room? Anything you want to know more about? Sophia?
I guess I'm kind of just wondering, like, what were the stepping stones to where they are, I guess, today. I mean, it seems like a lot of them is, I can't really tell. But this is like the job that they initially had coming out
Yeah.
of college. So I was wondering, well, if that's not true,
Okay.
like, how did they get there, or?
So the question is from Sophia Amoroso. What are some of the stepping stones that got you to where you are today? Did you decide while you were still here at Juniata that this was the approach that you wanted to take? So Laura, obviously, as you mentioned, not realizing, you know, maybe you were doing some journalism work and now that might be something that you are doing. But what are some of the stepping stones from May 2020, May 2017, when you all graduated, to where you're at today, which is October 2021? What were some of the steps to get to where you are today?
For me, a lot of the experience I had with the video production team were immensely impactful. Having on-set experience, whether it be behind the camera as a camera op, you know, DP, or as a director or a producer, even if you're just kind of setting up, you know, going to film an hour-long lecture for some class, there's still some minimal level of producing that goes into that. Having those hands-on set experiences sort of rolled into the first internship I had immediately after graduation, which was working for a local production team that often partnered with clients who needed creative for their TV campaigns that were, you know, going live. And that experience then spiraled into my current role as an agency producer for our clients that are doing campaigns within the TV space. So it sort of has just kept evolving. And I don't know that I want to be in advertising forever, but the fact that I know how to sell something will know that's a key skill that I can apply anywhere, even beyond advertising. You sell experiences, you sell creative, you sell design in some way, shape, or form. Doing it through advertising is a very different way of approaching creative. So yeah.
I would say currently I'm on a stepping stone in terms of where I want to be, but to where I am now, I would say throughout my undergrad experience, I kind of realized like, okay, so maybe design isn't exactly where I want to be, or like graphic design isn't something that I see myself fitting into completely. So just honing in on my experiences while in undergrad, like through the IMA program, honing on passions where I'm like, oh, I'm actually like designing something for like a social act. Like, okay, this is something that maybe I want to go into deeper. And then working with people through IMA and acknowledging a process that I was kind of familiar with through community-centered design that we were doing. I was like, okay, maybe I like this. Like, this is kind of an area that I want to focus my career on. And just like noting those steps, the things that you like, and just moving on to the next thing that you see that you are passionate about, and saying like, oh, okay, so maybe this is where I want to go in the next couple of months, or this is kind of where I see myself leading into. It's kind of how I got to where I am now in terms of pursuing a degree in social design. And yeah, currently on a stepping stone where I'm like, okay, I'm 23 and I'm in grad school. People also note that like I'm super young to be in a master's program. So like knowing that like, okay, this is obviously early on and it's for sure a stepping stone in terms of where I want to be in my career. But also noting that if you like something, note that it's like, okay, this is gonna like be a product of something that I'm passionate about later on. And yeah, that is my sage advice.
Dejia, how much do those passion projects matter while you're here at school, right? So what you're talking about right now, that idea of finding those things that start the fire inside of you, right? So what are the things that get you excited to do the work that you're doing? Yeah, very cool. All right, any other questions from the floor? Yep, Sadiq.
What struggles they experience, like just after graduating college, and if they struggle specifically with finding a job like that, what specific struggles they have?
All right, the question is from Sadiq, and we're wondering what struggles did you have after graduation? I might also even chime in on adding, how did you stay motivated? 3 of the 4 of you graduated in the middle of a global pandemic, and you are rocking it right now. So I'm wondering, on top of Sadiq's question about what challenges have you had, but also how did you overcome the trouble of interviewing and applying in either grad school or jobs? And Alex, I know you're a little more established right now, but even if you want to chime in on how do you all stay motivated when you have challenges in the midst of your work?
Yeah, I can kick it off. Certainly after graduating in our living rooms, there was not a lot of jobs available right at like after we graduated. Turned off the Zoom meeting and then go on LinkedIn and there's nothing. Just because no one was hiring, no one's working in the office, everyone's losing their jobs. And so I worked like a couple odds and ends jobs throughout the summer. I worked at a donut shop. I worked at a running store. I like was just doing that just to make some money, and then always on like Indeed and LinkedIn, and just like making annoying Facebook posts asking if people know any creative friends who are hiring. And it does kind of seem like a while you're like beating a dead horse, just pressing refresh and just asking away. But eventually like things do pick up, and there was a lot of no emails, a lot of like you're not hired emails, or a lot of just 1 round interview processes. But I think like the way that I stayed motivated was like I knew that like the right place would find its way eventually, no matter how long it would take. And I was really hooked. I was really hooked on this one place for a while that I was interviewing at, and 3 rounds in, they said no, and that was sad. But then Sheets came around, and then I mean, I'm happier than ever in the position that I can be. And it took until March of 2021 to find it and get hired. And so the process is long. But I think it's just like knowing you're worth it, and the company, you'll find the right fit for a company eventually. So.
Yeah, I had a similar experience. I was working, it took me a whole year to get hired. So I was working a lot of odds and ends jobs too. For me though, what helped me stay motivated was just like staying passionate about like my personal work. And I also think connecting with like peers and friends on their creative work always helped me a lot. Like I got to co-mentor Haley Purvis's capstone project, and that was really helpful for me as well to understand how I can apply my skills and keep creating work even as things seemed bleak. But yeah, it's hard to practice patience, but just like stay passionate on what your creative work is and you make it through.
I think also in that job search, I kind of chose not to settle for anything, knowing that like my work is worth something, like my passions are worth something. Yes, I did want to get paid and wanted a paycheck so bad. However, I was like, I'm not gonna sell out. I'm gonna find that job and just commit myself to the search like every day, just asking people that I knew through network, linking with Ryan, like looking at like exhausting resources she had and seeing if there were any jobs out there on certain like design boards. And eventually I think through that process, I just didn't settle for any job because I knew I'd be miserable if I did. And I found a temporary job that I liked and then went back to like the odds and ends job and was like, okay, so where do I want to go? Like, do I want to go back to school? Do I want to get a job? And just never settling throughout that whole thing. Being smart in your choices, but however, never settling in what you want to do.
Alex, did you have any challenges recently that, whether it's been, I know there's been many layoffs or possibly the subcontractors that you work with, have you had any challenges with the work that you've done or things that have caused you to have a lack of motivation, or how have you stayed creative during really the last year?
For me, it's really echoing what Laura said and finding your passion through personal projects that maybe not are related to anything that you're doing at a current role or while you're searching for jobs. If you're still working on that passion project, you're still getting to be creative, and it's still something that you can use in a portfolio. It's still something that you can use to advertise yourself, and you're staying engaged, you're staying active, you're never just stopping the creative part of everything that you enjoy. So there are definitely times where I find ruts in my work, or clients are being absurdly critical and have ridiculous critiques that make zero sense to anything we're trying to accomplish, which is certainly a bummer and disappointing when your work gets ripped to shreds sometimes. So finding ways to detach from that particular situation and finding enjoyment in those passion type projects, even if it's just for fun, certainly keeps me motivated.
Any other questions? Jackie? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, so the question is from Jackie, and I know all of you, we've talked about this. The question is about, have you had to apply for jobs with a designed resume or a Word document resume? I now require both of them to be created because many jobs will require to have a designed resume, but if you're applying as Alex has applied for a larger, more corporate environment, and Laura, I'm assuming yours as well, they use an application system where you apply with a Word document resume, and they usually use algorithms to pick and find the keywords, and that's how you get through that first round. So the question is, have you used the Word document resumes and design resumes? Do you see one side or the other? I don't know, am I saying this right? Maybe being more important at the current stage of interviewing for positions, or do you still feel that it's relevant to have both just in the event that you need either?
I find I've used my design resume a lot more. I think I have a Word document version of it somewhere, but it hasn't been updated recently. On my website, there is a link to my design resume as well. So if it is one of those particular application systems where they only accept a doc or Word doc file, I'll have everything typed up there. But if they accept a PDF, I'm going to export a PDF of my designed resume because it has all of the relevant information of my work, but also showcases the fact that I designed it myself. Sometimes the applications are, you just type it in on the fields, like, the job fields, and you type in the experience. So I found sometimes on Indeed, like my designed resume that is uploaded there, it doesn't understand where the roles are. So it defaults to put the wrong text in lots of weird places. So having that Word doc just to sort of like eliminate all of that extra work that you're gonna have to fix anyway in those types of applications is certainly helpful. But at least in my experience, I found that the design resume has been more helpful.
Yeah, I think it's good to have both. You don't want to be in a crunch and be like, I need the other one. Like, but I think I default to the design resume too. Because a lot of the time it's either, upload a PDF, or I've had you have to go line by line and log in your skills, which is needless, but the way it is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Dejia,
you'll find a lot of jobs
But-
like to ask you to upload your resume and then also type it out, which is the worst thing in the world.
Why do you have to do both? Zero sense.
Dejia,
I'm just
I
gonna
know
copy and paste it. So
Dejia, when you were working on your application for MICA, I remembered that we had to have, we had a couple meetings about what's on the design resume, what is the artist statement, what is your social design statement, right? But yeah, same concept that you had to have the documents, but then you had to have a separate copy and paste. So yeah, it's very time consuming.
Yeah, and like also always updating the resume too, because there's always like, I'm always learning things from my cohort members now where it's like, you shouldn't have this on your resume, or shouldn't have like the year you graduated, or like, I don't know, titles. It's like, everything about like a resume is so nuanced. Things are ever changing within like the job sphere of like, how do you basically avoid all terms of discrimination that could be like picked
Yes.
up through your resume. So that's always a thing that's front and center whenever I look at my resume in terms of like possibly interviewing for a job.
I know I have shared this with many of you, and I'm not sure if I've shared it with everyone that's in the room, but I'll mention, Dejia just mentioned the idea of discrimination from your resume. I was in Savannah, Georgia, graduating from SCAD and applied for a job at Purdue University. And I had my address on my resume because I was told to do so. And I didn't even make it through the interview process because they did not have funds to pay for relocation. So I later called and I really want this art direction job. I think many of you know I did end up getting that job, but the concept is there are things that we historically have been told to put on our resumes that nowadays will actually really keep you from making it through the first round interview process. I just saw a note, keep a master resume. Yes, Sierra, 110%. That's a tip Ryan gave me that changed my life. I actually, during my recent time here at Juniata, we're doing background checks, and I had to have every job that I worked at since I was in high school. Do y'all know how many jobs I've had? I had to call my mom, I had to call friends, I had to find people on social media. So yes, having some form, yes, and the dates. Yes, very true. So those,
Like
if you
babysitting, like
Yeah.
what?
yes, if you are applying for a job either in academia, in an educational institution, working with K through 12 school, you will need to keep all of that information. And from where you are today until when you get to my age, which I'm still very young. But when you get to that point, right, you need to keep all that information. So, for Jackie's question, I would say yes, not only to have that design document, but to also have a Word doc. And Sierra, good reminder to have even just a master document that you're never going to share with anyone, but you keep it for yourself. Addresses, maybe who you reported to at that job, contact information. I've worked for a lot of companies that I don't even know if they're still open, but having that information just as a reference to go back to is really important. All right, do we have more questions either on Zoom or in the room? Ron, do you have any questions? Anybody? All right, we've covered a lot of really good stuff. One of the other things I wanted to ask is, this is something very relevant with the current technology changes, the internet changing. How are you all staying lifelong learners? So how you have to learn stuff all the time. And part of your time at Juniata, considering that we are not a graphic design program that strictly teaches software and makes you do mock projects, we are teaching you to be more troubleshooting and learning along the way. Dejia, you might have a project that you need to learn WordPress, and Vinnie, you might have a project that you have to learn how to use social media management tools, right? So how are you all learning to be lifelong learners? What are the things that you have identified that help you stay up to date with technology in the field?
Yeah, I'll start. I'm lucky enough to work for a company that wants their employees to continue to learn. And so they've given us all memberships to this website called Skillshare. And they have graphic design classes on there, and they'd like me to start helping out more with like the illustration side of Sheets design. And I'm not a great illustrator at all. And so I'll be able to take classes on that. And then any design resources that you just find online, they're super willing to let you use your P card to just purchase them. I bought a few books on retail design, like graphic design for retail, just because I don't have a great background in that. And so I've purchased a few books, and they allot time on my daily schedule for me to read those books, aside from just like dishing out production tasks. And so I'm always learning while I'm on the job, which is a nice thing to be able to do.
I will often go down the YouTube rabbit hole. There's a, I mean, it's funny to say, but it's a really great resource, especially one that you don't have to pay for. And I will often be working on things, and like I'm trying to maybe describe an editing technique to an editor that I'm working with, but I'm like, oh, it just does the whoosh and the flippy thingy, but no one knows what that means. Only my brain can see it. So understanding terminology that I can find that way, or understanding how to actually apply that or put it together so that I can then, re-explain it, or even just for my own self-knowledge. I've found YouTube to be very helpful for that.
Yes, I also love YouTube. But I also find like my coworkers are a great resource. They're very cool if I'm like, I don't know how to do this. One thing that came up for me a lot is, even though I was experienced with Premiere, I hadn't used After Effects as much, and a lot of the job has been in like mimicking the After Effects techniques that other editors have done. So usually you just go to them, like, how'd you do this? The other thing I like to do when I can is, a lot of universities offer continuing education classes, like for adults. I love taking those. They're a lot of fun, and they're very little pressure, and you can learn a lot.
Yeah, there's also this resource, you guys probably have it, called like lynda.com or LinkedIn Learning Now, but that's also a resource that Micah has given me, where if I have no idea how to, like, I don't know, I think, yeah, recently I was wondering I forgot how to compile zip a AI file, and I was like, why do I not know how to do this? And then I was just like, AI packaging and packaging files, and then I just Googled it on Linda, and they're like, oh, it's the click of a button drop down. I'm like, I should have known this, but it was just a quick resource to just go on there, hodgepodge some words together to figure out the idea you're trying to get at. But yeah.
I think at Juniata, at least when I was there, they offered Linda for a while. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, so I asked our technology staff for probably since Alex was still a student here. And finally, I think in the last year or so, we now have a campus-wide license, and I tell the students all the time, really, and even actually in my IM 110 class recently, when students have questions, rather than me answering them, I've realized it's actually more important for me to help provide them with the right search words to think about, okay, you're trying to do this in Illustrator, you're trying to do this in Photoshop. How do you search the right language to find that actual tutorial or demo? And I do want to mention, so LinkedIn Learning is lynda.com. Linda sold it to LinkedIn for, I think, like a record $80 million. Linda is living on an island now, but Skillshare is a great resource. And I also want to mention, for those of you that might become experts in a certain field, so, you know, Vinnie, you really grow your illustration skills and you become an expert, you can actually get paid to offer courses on Skillshare with certain content. And I've been asked to offer those in the past. I have not done it yet. I'm a little bit busy teaching here at Juniata. But Skillshare is a great resource, and it's nice because it's people just like you and people just like us that are doing something and have learned how to do something, and they share their skills, hence the name Skillshare. So that's also a great resource. But yes, I think this pivots to a really good question. For those of you that are working in the field, how have you, during your interview process, felt comfortable or confident to ask for the resources that you need for the work that you're going to be doing? So being able to ask, I need some professional development, or I might wish to attend a conference related to the technology that I'm using. I might want to be able to purchase books, or, as Vinnie mentioned, have some allotted time to be doing this work. So I'm wondering, when you were interviewing, did this ever come up in your interviews of, you know, maybe they ask you, how do you stay up to date with all the technology? And was there ever a back and forth of discussion of how they would support you to continue learning?
There wasn't any questions in the interview, but your higher ups will set quarterly goals.
Mhm.
And then we have like another software where you can manage your goals called TalentWorks. And you have to do like check-ins with your goals every now and then. And so my creative director will help me set goals each quarter, and then we'll discuss ways on how to achieve them. And those can be things that she has for me, or she'll give me some time to brainstorm some ideas, and then I just present them to her, and it's just an approval-based process. So the goals are kind of set, just having a conversation with each other on things that I can work on, or that I think I could work on, and then we figure out ways to work towards achieving them.
This might be actually, Vinnie just mentioned annual goals, and this is something I've started talking about the seniors this semester in research, that, you know, we as faculty have to write our annual goals. This year, we're doing it in more of a much diluted down Qualtrics survey. In the past, it was usually a 2-page document. When I worked in industry, it was usually like a 5 to 7 page document, and there were poised, right, very pointed questions, as Vinnie was mentioning, about certain areas of my job and how I was going to do better the next quarter or the next year. So are you all having some type of an annual review or a monthly review? What do those look like? And maybe how do you prepare for those?
So how Comcast has it set up for us, we actually switched over to a new performance evaluation sort of system this year. So this is the first year that we're doing it this way, because before it was just a very generalized, these are the company goals. Are you achieving them in a very general sense? Yes or no? And then sort of curved scale, percentage-based raise after that point. But now they're a lot more personalized. So there are still the general company goals like commitment to diversity and inclusion, always staying engaged and communication, just those very general things. But then our team specifically has more poignant identified goals and making sure that we are staying on track to adhere to them and do what we can to achieve those goals. But then we've also additionally set up a personal based, like, what is my career goal this year? What do I want to learn? What do I want to accomplish? And my manager has worked with me this year to identify places where I can use that skill that I want to grow, and sort of identifying how I've done with that. And in the annual review process, we'll see how I did and then identify more things for the next year to keep working on. And maybe it's something completely different from that. Yeah.
We don't really have performance reviews at the moment. So we're mostly doing like team goals, like how many hours of footage. A lot of it has to do like the mushy goals basically is because we're also evaluating the rate at which we are accomplishing the work at the time. So we're evaluating how we're doing while also trying to develop our goals. So we keep saying we're building it as we're flying it, which doesn't really make sense, but there you have it.
Laura, they also call that a moving target.
Okay, there you go.
So
That one makes more sense.
Yeah, so what you're talking about is you can't really say these are your exact goals because you are currently working on the object or the item or the project that is the goal.
Yes, exactly. You said it much better.
Yeah. Dejia, are you doing anything right now with annual goals or performance goals, or did you have any when you were working?
I have both. So when I had my interim job, we had my creative director and I would sit down every 3 weeks to see what my goals were for the coming month and how I would effectively affect them, effectively get there to achieve them. In the next 3 weeks till the next meeting, it was more of a month by month basis. So they weren't quarterly. It was just like, you must get these 3 things done, and this is how I see that I can achieve those within these next 3 weeks realistically. Within my program now, we have 3-month check-ins around our thesis project, but also as a designer, where am I within my, adding to my toolkit as a design thinker, where am I in that? How am I contributing to the cohort in an effective way? Also, am I doing work that speaks to what I actually want to do after this program? Sorry, I live in the city and it's super noisy.
I miss those sounds, but that's okay. Don't mind them.
Yeah, but yeah, it's here. It's 3 months by 3 months, but so projectively, it's more so how do I see my goals, my individual goals, in contrast to my cohort goals. Yeah.
So really what you're all mentioning is our annual goals, biweekly goals, monthly goals, they can all be different. And as Laura mentioned, you can build them while you're flying them, right? That is something that's pretty common in the industry, that part of what we do, you're working and you're, in IMA Labs this semester, we're working with Huntington Dance Academy. That project, we're building it while we're flying, right? There are some students here right now that are on that project. And it can be tricky, right, to know what do we do next. And I've seen, every couple classes we have the kind of deer in headlights. Where do we go next? And I always have to remind them, this is your project. We're going wherever you decide we're going next. So thinking about, as you all have mentioned in different ways throughout this this panel, that it's really important to find the things that you're passionate about and make them happen. And so that's been really tied with a thread through this conversation, which I really appreciate because y'all know I love passion projects.
Ryan, just to add something, just sort of to goals and, what are we going to do next? And the commitment to lifelong learning. Something that really surprised me when I really stepped into this role is how many people just won't try and figure things out themselves. And the fact that I'm willing to just Google something and read a quick blurb about how to do something or what some weird editing term I've never heard of before, what that actually means, really shocked me. And so the fact that Juniata is really founded in that troubleshooting and, what we have this challenge ahead of us. Do we know how to do it? No, let's figure it out ourselves. Really put me so far above a lot of my competition or my coworkers just because I was willing to learn those things myself. And there still to this day people on my team that ask me questions and that I have to figure out that they could have just very well figured out themselves with a quick Google search. So yeah, just kind of wanted to throw that out there too.
Yes.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like one thing we said earlier was eagerness to learn, but I think eagerness to troubleshoot is right up there too. And it's not natural for everybody necessarily. And I think Juniata IMA really emphasizes that, which is nice.
I think, sorry to echo what everyone's saying, but in terms of a design thinking aspect to community engaged learning and what you're all doing within IMA, throughout Ryan's teaching you a form of human-centered design. That's what I'm currently learning to perfect, and also life-centered design. But within that design thinking in terms of goals, you don't initially know what your goal is until you do the research of a project. And you may not know what your guiding questions are until you actually interact with that research that you're doing with X client or whoever you're working with, maybe the Huntington Ballet Academy. But the whole idea of what do we do next? That's within the research. You won't know until your client you research that with your client and co-create with them. And that's all you're doing. And it's always just okay, what is the research telling me? And oh, can this be a possible goal? And how can I accomplish that goal or possible solution? And it's always within the next step in your research and conducting the next interview or tweaking the questions in terms of how to basically form a solution as you research. So goals aren't fit. They're not fixed. They're kind of just ever changing as you move throughout that process of research and design and synthesizing and ideating and to prototyping. It's very ever changing. Yeah, in terms of design thinking and what you guys are doing within IMA.
Dejia, you will be happy to know I am proposing to teach a design thinking course at Juniata that would be open to non-POEs. So that's a future goal. I'm not going to do it right now, but it is a future goal. And I want to make sure all of our students here at Juniata have the ability to approach a problem with the design thinking mindset because it's a fun and creative way to approach things that are really tricky to figure out. We call them wicked problems. So problems that are really hard to find an easy solution to. So, all right, do we have more questions? Anybody? No? We all hear enough? Hear enough good stuff? Yes, one more question.
How comfortable are you asking for resources within the job?
Okay, so we have one more question from Sadiq. How comfortable are you asking for resources within your job? Resources can mean a lot of different things, but how comfortable are you asking? Could even be how comfortable are you asking for a raise after you've had a great annual performance? That's a hard one. I'm not going to answer.
That one is so tough because I'm currently in that situation.
Yes.
Because I want to buy a house, but I have all my student loan debt from Juniata.
Yes.
Asking for the resources, I feel that I might be in a very different situation than maybe some of our other panelists, because I have the support of Comcast that has a plethora of resources that are easily accessible. So if I need more hard drives that might be like several $100 purchase, I can just go ahead and get those for myself. If I need more hours of editing time, if I need access to certain footage libraries or things like that, I can generally have those things available to me pretty quickly. But in terms of the salary thing, it's something I'm still fighting. So I guess we'll stay tuned on that one.
Haven't gotten to the salary part of my job yet. I've only been there for 7 months, so we'll cross that bridge when we get there, maybe. But in terms of resources, I struggled a bit at first asking for more time to complete things. As a new hire, I didn't think I had the authority to approach a project manager and say, hey, I need more time. I guess a part of it was like I didn't want to seem like a poor designer and not being able to complete things in their estimated level of effort. But what I learned quickly is project managers and graphic designers have very different vocabularies in terms of what level of effort means and how long it actually takes to do something. And so that was definitely a learning process, and I'm a lot more comfortable now approaching the project managers and saying, hey, an hour and a half to do this is very unrealistic. I need 2.5 hours, and they're okay with that because we want to make sure that we're delivering the best possible piece and not rushing through it. So it was a learning process, but now I'd say I'm fairly comfortable asking for more time as a resource. That's a big thing.
Yeah, I also haven't gotten to salary negotiation yet. Yikes. But in general, I feel pretty comfortable asking for resources. I'm very lucky. Vox Media has a very good company culture. I agree with Vinnie, though. Asking for time is hard, but very important. A lot of the times legal will give me a re-edit and they have no idea the work their particular re-edit will take. But in general, I think it's just always better to ask for an extension than try to like rush your work or not be able to turn it in. It's just always better to communicate.
There's the big three: cost, quality, speed. You can pick two.
There is a graphic design meme somewhere that has floated around since I was in college many moons ago. So I will have to share that with everyone. One of you just mentioned the company culture, and I want to kind of ask a question about that. I think I've shared with many of you, I have worked in many different fields in my career in working in the industry prior to coming to academia. And I've worked for companies that I was the only creative on staff and had the problem that asking for more time was really hard to justify because I was the only one that understood how much time it took for me to do the work. And so I'm wondering how each of you were able to kind of gut feeling, figure out the vibe of the company that you're working for, or Dejia, for you, knowing that MICA would be, the social design program would be a good fit for you, that culture would be a good connection for you. And so I'm wondering that how important it is now, not even pre or post pandemic, but still in the midst, how important is it for the company culture to be a really good fit?
I think like that's like number one on top of my list, because that doesn't just translate to work, it translates to after work when you go home. Where are the boundaries? Those are very important because that contributes to your inner health more so. Just to chalk it up to that, I would say it's number one. In terms of scoping that out, my first job out of college, I kind of sussed it out when I had my first call with the creative director in terms of how he was talking and how he chose to talk to me. So you can get that through communication for sure, as to how they speak about their their coworkers and how they talk about the work they do. Do they love it? What's the vibe around that? And what's the vibe around like higher ups as well? And just getting a sense of, is it a positive work that they're doing? They believe in it. And do you truly believe that you will fit in this realm of work? In terms of Micah, I knew I wanted to go to art school, but I was just like, is this the right fit for me? And speaking with the professors and then alumni and seeing like what is the culture within the studio was very important. Just seeing like what is your individual experience and just making sure you're like exhausting all those avenues if you have them to talk to anyone that's ever worked within that company, or if you're able to talk to anyone that's in that company currently to see what that culture is currently like.
I think maybe one of the only good things about being in the pandemic has actually proven that the work culture really truly matters, and that potential employees, have a say. You can't drive anywhere now without seeing, 10 now hiring signs out. We all know that every company is struggling with retaining employees because they care about that culture, and it's incredibly important, everything that Dejia just said about how you feel when you come home from work, how you're being supported, what is the company doing to support all of your personal beliefs, like in the midst of Black Lives Matter and the George Floyd situation that happened last year. Comcast really stood its ground and supported all of those efforts, and actually openly gave us time off to attend protests and things like that, which was something that was very important to me. And they're continuing to have those sorts of conversations to improve what they can do to be better in terms of diversity and inclusion. And I think that some of that speaks through in potential job postings as well. Like, sort of reading how they're formulating what your role is versus if it's, very strict sorts of verbiage, and just how they're communicating. You can sort of see through some of that. The role that I was in just for a few months before Comcast was honestly miserable. And the marketing director of our team was someone who didn't value anyone else's opinions, and just what he felt was the right approach to marketing was the only way. Certainly was not. So bringing new ideas to the table was something that I was always afraid to do, but it's something that I value, having that voice and having that culture that supports everything that you feel true to yourself is incredibly important. And I think that there are a lot of companies that are finally waking up to that, if they haven't already.
I wanted to chime in just a final closing statement on that. I recently had a discussion with a few academic colleagues, not here at Juniata. We were attending a conference together virtually, and there was a side discussion about your work life is such a big part of your life, right? It's not just where you go, just 9 to 5. You're thinking about your work outside of work. For folks that have young families, right? Your ability to go home and unplug from that and not feel that you're doing a bad job by also being a parent or being involved maybe in a community-driven organization or running for elected office, right? There's all these different things that each of us wish to do with our lives that it's really important to know that company culture will support you in doing that. And so I think it's really interesting how each of you have chimed in that your coworkers that you're working with are a good support network, or going into the office one day a week is a really enjoyable thing to do. So that's a promising thing for me to hear now that you all have graduated and are successful young adults. So it's great to hear that. I want to check if we have any other final questions. Anybody else? Good. All right, we are close to our closing time. I did want to leave this open from 4 to 5:30 just in case, especially since we ended up having 4 of you. I think this was a great discussion. As you all know, I want to invite everyone to these conversations, and I'm grateful to have the 4 of you participating today. I am very proud of all of you. You already all know that though. So it's great to see you, and I hope that we can continue to stay in touch. And I do have several classes this semester and next semester. I've thought about reaching out to several of you individually to join and maybe do a Zoom presentation, or Vinnie, I know you're local enough that you could come join us on campus. So I might do that. So stay tuned to your emails, check your emails. But I want to mention, I appreciate your time and your energy in sharing how the IMA program has supported you in your careers or going off into graduate school. It was great to hear from you all. So do you have any final stuff that you want to share? If not, thank you. I'm going to clap for you. Y'all want to clap? All right. Well, thank you. I hope you all have your Halloween costumes picked out. I know it's Friday of Halloween weekend, so I better let you go so you can get those ready. I expect
Thank you.
pictures.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. It was good to see you all.
Good to see you.
Bye.
Bye.